Hey friends, welcome back to Homestead on a Prayer. I thought today might be a good day to give you all a little update on how my seedlings are doing. You know, some of these seedlings we started together and they've been really growing and looking great. So I just wanted to give you an update on how they're doing, show you a little more what I'm growing, and also talk about some seedling care tasks that we need to do now. So here on my deck, you can see these are my cool weather seedlings, and this is their very first time outside. When you start seeds inside your house, there's a really important process that you want to go through before you actually plant them out in the garden in their eventual space where they're going to live out their lives, and that's called the hardening off process. And that's what I'm starting with all these cool weather plants today. Basically, when you grow plants inside your house, they're very sheltered. Okay, Clint's gonna join in on our conversation a little bit, so don't mind him in the background. So as I was saying, seedlings are very sheltered when they're grown inside, and it's important to acclimate them really gradually to outdoor conditions. Otherwise, they can just get really shocked by the cooler weathers, by the variability in temperature, by just the harsh sunlight. There's just a lot for them to deal with when they've been growing, living very pampered lives inside under my grow lights with fairly steady temperature conditions. So today, these are my cool weather plants. These are going to be outside for just about an hour and a half today. Tomorrow I'm going to leave them out slightly longer, and I'm just going to keep leaving them out a little bit longer each day until probably for about a week or so, depending on weather conditions. And then I'm going to, at that point, they should be tough enough to withstand life out in the garden. So it is a little bit earlier than I really need to be hardening these plants off. But as you'll see in a minute when we look at the indoor seedlings, I really needed space under my grow lights. So let's just really quickly look at what we have growing here. I have a couple types of alyssum here. I've got white alyssum, and then this one is purple alyssum. I have leeks here. This is celery. Admittedly, I should have started the celery a little bit earlier in the season than I did. So we'll see how that goes. It's a little bit of a guessing game. I'm going to try it and see what happens. Next, I've got some dill here. Now, according to most people, dill prefers to be direct sown, but I haven't always had the best luck direct sowing it. So I decided to start some in these little 6-packs here and also start some in the garden so we can compare. In this tray here, I've got my cauliflower seedlings. I have 2 varieties of cauliflower. I've got snowball cauliflower and I've got Rober cauliflower. So we'll be seeing how those do. This tray over here is my broccoli, and I have 3 varieties of broccoli this year. Broccoli is one of my favorite plants to grow in the vegetable garden. It's just really good. It's really delicious. When you harvest it fresh from the garden, it's just so much better than the broccoli you get from the store. And everyone in my family really likes it. We actually eat quite a bit of broccoli. But the problem with growing your own broccoli, if you grow, say, 12 broccoli plants, and they're all the same variety, they're all going to be ready to harvest at very similar times. You know, there's a little bit of variation from one plant to another. But basically, within a week or two, we would have 12 big broccoli heads to harvest. And while you could preserve it, it's true, I much prefer fresh broccoli to frozen broccoli. So because of that, I want to stagger my harvest time. So I planted 3 different varieties of broccoli that all have different maturity dates. The hope is that they will all mature at different times. We'll get to spread out our broccoli harvest a little bit. So first I've got this imperial broccoli. This one, I want to say, I have never grown this one before. I think this is a slightly later maturing variety than what I'm familiar with. So this one should be extending the harvest a little bit. Romanesco broccoli. Some people actually consider this a cauliflower. It's really cool looking. I tried it last year for the first time and was not successful with it, so I'm trying again this year. And finally, Eastern Magic. I do grow Eastern Magic every year, and that one's really reliable for me. I can pretty much count on having success with that variety. Actually, for the past few years, I've grown it. Up until that point, I liked a different broccoli variety called Arcadia. That variety got discontinued, so I had to find a replacement. And Eastern Magic has done really well for me the past few years. So that is really what's supposed to be my main crop broccoli. I'm growing the Romanesco because it's a little bit different and I wanted to try it. And I'm adding in the Imperial, which, as I said, is an experiment. I haven't grown that before. And the final tray here, I have a little more alyssum. This is mostly a mix of cabbages and kales. So I have 2 types of cabbage. I have an early Jersey Wakefield and a Savoy cabbage. You can see this one has a little bit of crinkle on the leaves already. I have a Russian red kale here, and back here I have dazzling blue kale, which is a lacinato type kale. And over here, I have blue curled scotch. This is the classic kale, like what you'd be likely to see at the grocery store. And finally, on the end here, I have a sprouting broccoli. I've never grown sprouting broccoli before, but I really wanted to try it because it just sounds really good, and I like to experiment in the garden and try new things. The specific variety that I'm growing is called Aspa-brock because the leaves are supposed to, or the florets are like broccoli, and the stems are supposed to taste like asparagus. So if you've grown it before, I'd love to hear if that's true. I'd love to hear how you like it, and I'd love to hear what you do with it once you have it harvested. So we're going to let all these cool weather seedlings hang out a little bit while we go inside and take a look at the more tender seedlings. So now we're here at my indoor grow station, and I just want to show you guys how the seedlings in here are doing. First of all, these 2 trays up here are empty. I am hopefully going to get these planted today if I have time. One of these is going to be for my annual herbs, mostly basil, a couple other herbs as well. The other one is going to all be flowers, which I did make a video a few days ago, maybe a week or so ago, about all the different flowers that I'm growing in my vegetable garden this year. I can link that video below in case you're interested in the varieties, but that's what these 2 trays are going to be filled with. Over here I have one lonely little Roma tomato plant that I have separated out, and back here I've got some little annual salvia that's just starting to germinate. On this lower shelf here, this whole tray is, except for the very end, filled with all tomatoes. You can see that most of these pots have multiple tomato seedlings in the same pot. So for example, I'll pull this one out because these are a little bit larger, and you can see that there are quite a few of those. I do usually start my tomato seedlings like this with multiples in each pot. I find that it saves me a lot of space in the beginning when space is really at a premium. So what happens is, now you just saw all my cool weather plants are outside. They're going to be hardened off. So they're going to be coming in and out. But during the time when they're inside, they're not going to be going back under these grow lights. So that freed up some space for me. So now that I have some space free, I can do some things like separate out these tomato plants and give each of them their own pot. So if we have time at the end of this video, maybe we'll separate out a couple tomato seedlings together. That's definitely something I need to get to today. So you can see I have a couple little stragglers that are just germinating, like this Dr. Weish's here. Cherokee Purple was running a little bit behind too. And then I have some, like these, that are really big enough for their own pots and definitely need to get split up. Over here, you can see I have all my peppers. These have been split up. So you can see how much bigger and more beautiful these are looking. Now that they're in their own pots, they have their own space. So it's been my experience that when you start seedlings close together, kind of crowded like that, it works really well for the very beginning, but it doesn't take very long before they start to grow and they really want their own space. And once you do give them their own space, they really pop and the growth really does speed up. So over here, you can see I have a few peppers in smaller pots here. These are peppers that I'm going to be giving away to family and friends, and I started them in these smaller pots. These were just leftover pots that I had from plants that I purchased at a nursery next year. So when I split them up from the other pepper seedlings, I put them in the small pots because I'm going to be giving them away, and I didn't want to use my nice pots. By using these, just reuse pots, people don't have to worry about returning my pots to me, which makes things a lot easier. Now here, you can see I have some sweet potato slips. Basically, the sweet potato slips start down here. You can see I've got lots more sweet potato slips that I need to pull off and start rooting. But I've got my trays of sweet potatoes here on this heat mat. I did make a video about how I start my sweet potatoes. Basically what I do is I take the sweet potatoes, these are leftover sweet potatoes that I grew last summer, and I plant them halfway in soil. I put them on a heating mat right here. And what happens is that the potatoes will start to wake up. They'll send out little sprouts, which will eventually turn into giant sprouts like this. So you can see some of these really long ones, I really need to break off the potatoes and put them in a jar of water to root. That's also on my to-do list. Most likely, because sweet potatoes like it really hot outside, it's probably not going to be warm enough for them outside for quite a while. So once they get their roots in that jar, once they have a pretty significant root system growing, I am going to take them and put them in their own individual pots with some soil and let them live in there until it's warm enough outside to plant them out. So you can see here's an illustration of how space is at a premium. I took some space in my sweet potato container that was a little bit bare, and I popped some tomato seedlings in there. These are tomato, well, in the front are peppers, but most of these are tomato seedlings that I have split up. And as I said, I need to go do that with the rest. So these tomato seedlings in the large pots are the tomatoes that I'm keeping. These in these little disposable cups, or the peppers in these small pots here, are the seedlings that I'm giving away. I like to give away a lot of seedlings to friends and family because I always end up with extras. I always plant extra seeds in case some don't germinate, but inevitably more germinate than what I actually need. So then I have extra seedlings that I can give away to friends and family. But I unfortunately don't have enough space under my grow lights to put them all in these large pots. So what I like to do is put them in the small pots, give them to my friends and family a few weeks before it's time to plant them out. That way they can up pot them into larger pots. They can get their plants to really spread out a little bit more. So in the next few days, I'll be giving away the plants in the small pots, and then my plants will have a little bit more space to spread out. So you can see I've got these 2 empty trays here with no plants in them. I've got these pots and some of these disposable ones. I need to fill these with soil and then transplant out or separate out some of these tomato seedlings. So that is my project for today. So I'm just going to show you guys real quick how I split up these seedlings. Now you can see, if you look at where the different seedlings are positioned within this pot, you can see that when I first sowed the seeds, I tried to leave as much space as possible between them because that makes it a little bit easier to split them up. So this tomato variety is Cindy's West Virginia. I'm actually going to pull this little one out because it's not very healthy. I have 5 healthy seedlings in here. I'm planning to keep 3 seedlings for myself, and I'm going to give 2 away. So I'm just going to show you how I split these up into their different individual pots. So the first thing that I'm going to do is make a little well in the pot that I'm planning to put the first seedling in. I want to make it very deep because tomato seedlings really benefit from being planted deeply. So these little seedlings here, when I transplant them out into their individual pots, I want to bury them almost all the way up to their first set of true leaves, because what will happen with tomatoes is they will grow roots all along the stem, and by potting them up deeply like that, it allows them to get a really strong root system. It's also a really good opportunity to correct leggy seedlings. So I'm going to start with this one in the corner here. Basically, I'm just going to take a fork and I want to just stick it down between the seedlings as far as it'll go. And then I just want to pull the seedling out along with its roots and a nice clump of dirt. Then I'm just going to stick it into the little hole that I've prepared for it. I've got my little pot here of extra soil, and we're just going to fill that up as much as we can. And then our little seedling is planted nice and deeply. Stick a tag in this one and give it a little more soil. So this one is ready to grow on its own. So tomato seedlings like this are pretty forgiving. You know, I just pulled it out and messed with its roots, and it's going to bounce right back and just be as strong as ever. Now, you do want to be as gentle as possible, because the more soil and the more roots that you transfer the plant with, the easier the transition will be. But even though this plant might sulk for a day or two and wilt a little bit, it's going to perk right back up. Probably by tomorrow or the next day, it's going to be back to normal, and then it's going to really take off and grow really strong. Now, you don't want to use this potting technique with plants that really don't like their roots disturbed. So think of things like cucumbers, squashes, melons. They really don't like their roots messed with. So you can't use the same technique, at least not as effectively, with every type of seedling. But I find that it works really well for tomatoes especially. I do also grow my peppers this way as well, and they've always worked really well for me. So I'm just going to pot up the rest of these little tomato seedlings here and get them set up under the grow light. So I brought all these seedlings in. They were out for about an hour, hour and a half, and it's time for them to come inside and take a little rest from their hardening off process. I'm going to get my other tomato seedlings that I split up under the grow light so those can get growing. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today and just getting a little update on my seedlings. I'd love to hear how your seedlings are doing if you feel like sharing in the comments. I hope you're having a great day, and I can't wait to see you soon. I'll see you next time.